to enjoy your time here and find peace in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. I am the sister raised by the notorious villain, Alexander Chen. While I was in the middle of burying a body, a few lines of glowing, bullet chat suddenly flickered before my eyes. The villain has probably already met his biological sister at the temple by now, right? His sister told him his slaughterous karma is far too heavy. Alexander hasn't even realized yet that the sister he's been raising for years is actually a fake. After all, this is a story of redemption. The glowing text continued to scroll, relentless and cruel. Just wait until the real sister appears. The villain will surely drop his blade and stop the killing, repenting for the sins he once committed. Once this sister, obsessed villain learns the truth, that fake girl will surely be ground into dust. Ground into dust. That's being generous. For a vengeful man like him, he'll definitely lock the fake sister in a secret chamber and peel the skin from her bones. I paused for a moment, silently setting down the shovel in my hand. The weight of the earth felt heavy, but the weight of those words was heavier. "Brother," I said, my voice cutting through the damp air, "I suddenly feel that the mortal world is far too lonely. I've decided to go and become a nun." Alexander let out a cold snort, his silhouette sharp against the gloom. "Only now do you want to wash your hands of this? It's a bit late for that. What was it you said before? I'm in charge of killing, and you're in charge of burying. Or perhaps there's some handsome monk in that temple who's stolen your heart, making you want to turn over a new leaf." I originally wanted to tell him that turning over a new leaf wasn't quite the right phrase to use there, but then I remembered that Alexander was the villain of this story. While others spent 10 years buried in books, Alexander relied on nothing but his own reckless courage, rising from a common beggar to become the Prince Regent. It was only natural that his head wasn't exactly filled with scholarly prose. So, I frustratedly shut my mouth. Alexander stared intently at the fresh mound of earth on the ground, a faint, chilling smirk playing on his lips. "Perhaps we should plant some of the flowers you like here," he mused. "I've heard that human remains make the best fertilizer. I seized the estate of the Minister of Revenue 2 days ago. We found quite a few interesting things in that old man's treasury, including a glowing night pearl the size of a fist." He turned his gaze toward me. "Didn't you make a huge fuss 2 days ago about being afraid of the dark and unable to sleep? It'll work perfectly as a candle. Also, some pink shimmering silk was sent up as tribute. I've already had 2 dresses tailored for you." I was still reeling from those floating words about grinding bones to dust and peeling skin. By the time he reached the last sentence, my voice was trembling. No need. I already have plenty of dresses." Alexander's biological sister was still alive out there. How could I dare to be so arrogant as to accept his gifts? Alexander's expression turned unreadable in an instant. "What? Is it not to your taste? Or do you find it dirty?" He lifted his foot and stepped heavily onto the iron shovel, driving it deeper into the dirt. I forced a strained smile, trying to keep my composure. "Pink is a bit too youthful. I'm already 19 this year. Serafina Chen." Well. Every time Alexander called me by my full name, it meant he was extremely angry. A sense of dread seeped out from my very bones, making me subconsciously take a step back. "No, brother, I truly didn't mean," I stammered, not even knowing which word had provoked him. Alexander gave me a deep, lingering look before flicking his sleeves and walking away without another word. Once he was gone, my maid, Alana, hurried over with a cautious, worried face. "My lady, the master still dotes on you," she whispered. "Even though he's angry, he only left on his own and kept the carriage for you. Please, my lady, if you're no longer upset, give us a smile." Looking out at a garden filled with graves, I truly couldn't find it in me to smile. At least these people had someone to bury them. Who knew if there would even be a tattered mat to wrap my corpse in when my time came? Sitting in the spacious, luxurious carriage, I closed my eyes as it rumbled into motion. I remembered the last time Alexander had called me by my full name. It was when he had been poisoned by his political enemies. That was the year he escorted the young emperor into the capital. Those who had resisted to the end were now 6 feet under, while others tried to win Alexander's favor by throwing lavish banquets for him. At one of those banquets, several beauties were offered to him. He accepted them all with a smile. Alexander was born with an exceptionally handsome face, his features tinged with a touch of elegance, and a beauty mark at the corner of his eye that only added to his charm. He was a beauty himself, so naturally, his standards were sky high. When those beauties were brought before him, they instantly paled in comparison. The women were trembling in his presence. Alexander simply told them to get out and returned to his room alone, forbidding anyone from entering. I only remember that Alexander was in a very bad state that day. Despite the freezing winter, he was soaking himself in a tub of ice, cold water. The guards didn't dare stop me as I approached the bath. Alexander was wearing only a thin layer of white inner robes, his eyes tightly shut, his teeth chattering as he mumbled something incoherent. Xu Ying, win or lose. Secular ties. I wondered aloud. Was he just drunk from the banquet? I didn't recall any noble lady in the capital named Xu Ying. Suddenly, a hand with prominent veins gripped mine with terrifying strength. I saw it clearly then. A fresh wound on Alexander's wrist, stained with blood from his own teeth. Water splashed everywhere as he thrashed. Alexander pushed me away violently. Even as I fell to the floor and scraped my hand, he didn't seem to care. I sat there, overcome with worry. Brother, don't be like this, I'm scared. Are you poisoned? I'll call the physician right now. His reason, nearly incinerated by the poison, returned in an instant. The curve of his lips remained, but it was now filled with mockery. He rasped, Serafina, get out. Usually, he called me Sarah. I felt a sudden pang of hurt. Without a word, I stood up. We had promised to endure hardships together, and I had only entered because I was worried for him. As I closed the bedroom door, I heard Alexander's voice trembling inside. I'm afraid I'll make a mistake. To this day, I still haven't figured out what kind of mistake Alexander would ever be afraid of making. Since my brother took power, many people have tried to flatter him. When they couldn't sway him, they tried to sway me. The year I turned 16, matchmakers nearly broke down the threshold of the Chen mansion. Alexander showed blatant contempt, yet he surprisingly respected my opinion, bringing the suitor lists to me with a cold face. Those books were filled with the sons of marquises and noble families. Their looks, family backgrounds, and even their hobbies were recorded in meticulous detail. I grew bored of looking at them and pushed them back toward him. I truly don't fancy any of them. Why don't you help me choose, brother? Whoever you say is good, I'll take. Only then did Alexander's eyes soften slightly. We both knew how difficult our journey had been. Sarah, you must never let a pretty face distract you from the bigger picture. I nodded like a little rabbit. I'll listen to whatever you say, brother. Unexpectedly, the very next day, Alexander had a sign hung in front of the mansion gates. It read, "No matchmakers or dogs allowed." That sign stayed there for years, stubbornly turning me into an old maid. I was annoyed and didn't want to return to the mansion to face him immediately. I wandered around for half the day, but as soon as I returned, Sebastian Zhang, a guard, came running up. My lady, it's bad. The master has gone to the temple to start a massacre. The bullet chat appeared before my eyes again, glowing and urgent. It's here. Today is the day the villain goes to Xuanji Temple and meets his biological sister. I've followed this story for so long just to see the siblings reunite. I want to see the kind-hearted sister save her villainous brother. I'm more interested in the end of this fake sister. She actually knew all along she wasn't his sister, yet she kept pretending. I closed my eyes, letting the carriage sway me. Those words weren't wrong. From the very beginning, I knew I wasn't Alexander's biological sister. I was 8 years old when I met him. A ruined temple on the outskirts of the city was my home. That day, amidst a misty drizzle, a scrawny youth walked into the temple, carrying a piece of coarse rope. That was the young Alexander. His clothes were tattered, but his eyes were beautiful. I'm used to being robbed by beggars, he muttered, ignoring me. He desperately stuffed a bun into his mouth while glancing my way. Hey, give me a hand. Move that altar over here. I can't reach the beam. I struggled to swallow the last half of my bun, hid the rest behind my back, and stood up very reluctantly. You want to hang yourself from the rafters. There was a crossbeam above. Alexander threw the rope over it and tied a knot. The moment the altar was kicked over, I realized he was truly seeking death. Luckily, the rope wasn't strong. I pulled a half-dead Alexander down, and we rolled together into the dust and mud, looking absolutely pathetic. My already thin and ragged clothes were torn down the back during his struggle. The boy was furious, taking his anger out on me. If you're going to save someone, finish the job. Don't you understand? He was very good at scolding people, lecturing me for half the day without using a single curse word. It was annoying, so I simply turned my back to him, but the voice behind me suddenly stopped. A moment later, someone embraced me, trembling. "Sister, you're still alive." At first, I thought he was trying to trick me, but he said there was a peach blossom-shaped birthmark on the back of my neck. It couldn't be wrong. I was his younger sister who had been kidnapped as a child. The boy's tears soaked my shoulder. "Do you want half a bun?" I asked, picking up the remains from the floor. Alexander looked at it with pure disgust. "Is this all you usually eat?" In truth, that birthmark on my neck was a scar from being branded with a hot iron when I was little. But Alexander was too happy, so happy that he forgot he wanted to die. And that hug was just too warm. It was so warm that it made me greedy. It had been a long, long time since I had felt what it was like to have family. Alexander held me and cried for a long time. He swore an oath that even if he had to steal or rob, he would make sure I lived a clean and dignified life. That night, he returned with a limp, his face and hands covered in wounds, but he brought back a roasted chicken and a set of clean clothes. I heard he had been chased through 3 streets with a heavy broom. Yet, when he returned, he only smiled at me. "From now on, if I have a roasted chicken, our Sira will always have a meal to eat." He claimed he had already eaten, and I ate the entire chicken by myself. But when I woke up in the middle of the night, I saw Alexander crouching on the floor, secretly sucking on the leftover chicken bones. My brother's life was truly too difficult. Today we had chicken, but tomorrow we weren't even sure of a full stomach. Back then, the world was in chaos. Alexander felt that stealing and robbing wasn't a long-term plan. The empire was falling apart. If we headed south, we would surely find a place to belong. That was the year various lords rose in rebellion, fighting to the death for the throne. Alexander took me to Chenzhou. From a nameless nobody, he fought his way up. 2 years later, he became the youngest and most ferocious general under Prince Kang. He was only 1 step away from the pinnacle of power. However, Prince Kang fell gravely ill and could no longer fight. Before he passed, he left behind a young son. Everyone thought that a man like Alexander, who held military power and was known to be ruthless, would surely usurp the throne. But instead, he protected that young prince every step of the way until the boy ascended the throne. My carriage swayed as Sebastian dismissed the driver and took me straight to Xuanji Temple. Ever since the new dynasty was established, Alexander had taken the title of Prince Regent, dealing with the court with lightning-fast brutality. When he encountered remnants of the previous corrupt regime, his method was simple: kill. 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 I couldn't wrap my head around it. Alexander's reputation was indeed terrible. But usually, there was a reason when he killed. This time, there was truly no need to lay a hand on the monks of Xuanji Temple. Inside the temple, the monks were lined up in several rows under the corridor. Alexander seemed to be searching for someone, his expression darkening. It looked like someone had beaten me to it and blocked his path. Under the moonlight, a young girl in coarse cloth knelt on the ground, her fair face drenched in tears. "Lord Alexander, the current young emperor is merely a puppet in your hands. Why must you use the excuse of searching for someone to storm Xuanji Temple?" The girl was innocent and lacked any guile. Though she was trembling with fear, she gritted her teeth and met Alexander's gaze. Under the moonlight, Alexander let out a soft scoff. The guards behind him took a step forward. The girl's eyes were crystal clear, her lashes fluttering. "If you wish to harm a single person in this temple today, you'll have to step over my corpse." She prostrated herself on the ground, revealing a slender, graceful neck. Alexander suddenly froze. His gaze lingered for a long time on the back of the girl's neck. There sat a perfect, natural peach blossom birthmark, far more complete than the one on mine. However, Alexander only hesitated for a split second. "Natalia Ning, the only daughter of Lord Nathaniel Ning, I presume." In the courtyard, Natalia looked up in shock. "What do you want?" Alexander still wore that indifferent smile. He merely tilted his head and spoke to his confidant, Tristan Zheng. "Look into it." With just one look, the confidant understood and quietly withdrew. Lady Ning was a devout Buddhist who had raised her daughter to be kind and virtuous, someone who would feel guilty even for stepping on an ant. Until half a month ago, Lady Ning had been struck by a mysterious illness. The Ning household had called many physicians, all to no avail. Her daughter, Natalia, had stayed at Xuanji Temple to fast, bathe, and pray for her mother's health for an entire month. I didn't know why Alexander had come to the temple, but I knew him well. Alexander was a man who only acted after everything was calculated. Perhaps he had long since found a lead. I walked out of the shadows, feeling as though my soul had left my body. Sebastian was in disbelief. My lady, are we really just going to leave it at this? The master's reputation is already bad enough. Shouldn't we try to persuade him? I cut him off, shaking my head. Someone is already handling it. Just like in that ruined temple years ago, Alexander could give up on seeking death for my sake. I looked back one last time. Now, he naturally won't go against his biological sister's wishes and start a massacre. Sebastian, do not tell my brother that I came to Xuanji Temple tonight. For the next 2 days, Alexander seemed very happy. That night, after returning to the mansion and hearing from the guards that I had come home early, he didn't seem to care. He didn't send anyone to watch me, nor did he come to question me personally. The butler still consulted me on everything, the guards showed no change in behavior, and everything in the mansion remained as it was. However, I knew this was just the calm before the storm. Those strange words kept dancing before my eyes, speaking of a tragic end I was about to face. Another day passed, and Alexander went into the palace late at night to meet the young emperor, Theodore Li. The next morning, the young emperor was forced to have a dream about the late Prince King. Upon waking, he wept bitterly during the court assembly, declaring a general amnesty for the entire empire. Alana told me this as if it were a joke. My lady, isn't it strange? It's a good thing, of course, but our new dynasty has been established for 3 years already. Why a general amnesty now? She continued, scrubbing a table. What's even more surprising is that as the Prince Regent, Alexander actually strongly supported this. He even praised the young emperor for his supreme filial piety. The Prince Regent, who usually looked down on the emperor's whims, hadn't used a single insult this time, speaking with such sincerity that poor Theodore was left blushing with shame. The court officials all felt that the sun must have risen in the west today. After the assembly ended, Alexander even invited several generals who had been with him in Chenzhou to go out for drinks. It was truly rare. He was exceptionally good at using his power for personal gain. When he was happy, he could make the whole world smile with him. I understood this all too well. Alexander was almost certain that Miss Natalia was his long-lost biological sister. I thought he must be delirious with joy. Yet, from beginning to end, he kept me completely in the dark. That night, as Alana helped me comb my hair, she mentioned offhandedly, I just bumped into someone. It looked like Mr. Tristan had entered the mansion. My fingertips trembled. Tristan was the strategist Alexander trusted most. To be summoned in the middle of the night meant something major was happening. But I didn't expect that Tristan wasn't the only one there tonight. Fortunately, since I was the one managing this vast mansion, getting close wasn't difficult. Through a layer of paper windows, the voices of the strategists drifted out. Why has your highness summoned us so late? Is it to finally pull the little emperor off his horse? Tristan, who knew the inside story, asked cautiously. Now that the Prince Regent has found his biological sister, how should we deal with the one currently in the mansion? After a moment of shock, someone else asked suspiciously, could she have been sent by an enemy to plot something? Another voice suggested darkly, why not just kill her? Inside the room, Alexander lifted his eyelids, coldly glancing at the man who had suggested killing me. The strategist was so terrified by that gaze that he broke into a cold sweat. Alexander's voice was full of mockery as he spoke. It was I who was blind back then. Does your highness feel that killing her would be too easy? I only heard that one sentence. I didn't dare listen further. I was terrified they would devise some horrific torture to inflict upon me, and so I fled, remaining entirely ignorant of what followed in that room. After I left the study, Alexander shot a sharp glance at the strategist who had spoken. Are you tired of living? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. The man immediately went as silent as a cicada in winter. Alexander looked at the group of supposedly brilliant advisors, suddenly letting out an abrupt, cold laugh. These strategists had all joined him midway through his journey. They had many schemes, and they saw everything as filthy. He simply found it ridiculous. He remembered himself at 14, empty-handed, yet having mistakenly identified a sister. And in that ruined temple, an 8-year-old Sarah had followed him steadfastly for 11 years. That was a matter he wouldn't discuss for now. Alexander fell silent for a moment before speaking slowly, choosing his words with uncharacteristic care. Actually, the reason I summoned you all tonight is that I have a friend. The confidant standing beside him furrowed his brows, then furrowed them again in confusion. A friend? A friend of the Prince Regent? Could it be one of those crude generals from Chenzhou? Alexander ignored the muttering and continued. This friend of mine. He loves a woman, but he suffers because he doesn't know how to confess his heart. It's reached the point where lately, he doesn't even dare to see her. Your Highness is of noble status. Your friend is of high status and great power? The confidant corrected himself hastily. He should simply seize her and bring her back. Alexander gave a smile that wasn't quite a smile. Are you tired of living? The room went cold. He then continued on his own, his voice softening slightly. The woman this friend likes has the beauty of a celestial being. Her beauty is enough to make the moon hide and the flowers blush. She is captivating beyond words, even flowers and grass feel ashamed in her presence. He hates that he cannot give her every good thing in this world. Then, Alexander's voice took on a hint of grievance, a tone none of them had ever heard before. But he doesn't know what's wrong with her lately. She refuses to accept his kindness and even seems involved with some monk in a temple. She even has the intention of becoming a nun. At the mention of the word, monk, Alexander's eyes became as sharp as blades. The strategist's minds whirled with 1,000 thoughts. The Prince Regent had never used such poetic descriptions for a woman. Who was the poor soul caught in this? The room was deathly quiet. They looked at Alexander, whose face was flushed with a spring-like agitation, yet he stumbled over his words like a novice. When it came to dark schemes, murder, arson, or framing others, they were the best. But coaxing a young lady was truly beyond their abilities. Alexander's face went cold as he realized their uselessness. He dismissed them with a wave of his hand. Get out. Raising you lot is truly a waste of resources. Later, Alexander came to find me, but he only leaned against the doorframe, looking as though he wanted to speak but hesitated. During the long silence, I thought about our journey to this day. Even if I had no great merit, I had certainly worked hard. Perhaps if I cried a bit, Alexander would soften his heart and spare me. I was just about to kneel and confess everything when the glowing bullet chat appeared before my eyes again. Evil doers get what they deserve. The truth is about to be revealed. How satisfying. Serafina didn't really do anything wrong. Once the villain gained power, he gave her secret guards. She even sent people to find his biological sister, didn't she? She only committed the lie after hearing the real infant had drowned years ago. Honey, you're confused. Did you forget what happened to the person who confessed directly last time? My eyelids twitched violently as the text scrolled past. The person before me was Lord Victor Wei, whom Alexander himself had promoted. There was some sentiment there. Yet when Victor confessed to embezzling intended for dike repairs, using inferior materials that led to a devastating flood, Alexander didn't blink. He only granted him 2 words, halve him. Thinking of this, my expression froze. Brother, why are you here? I asked, my voice tight. Alexander fell silent and let out a soft, almost imperceptible laugh. My mind raced to calculate my options. At this moment, Alexander still hadn't chosen to expose me. There was still a way out. I changed my tactic, looking at him with a fawning expression. Brother, look what I discovered. 2 days ago, I was at a tavern listening to stories and happened to meet a scholar named Marcus Meng. He's handsome, exceptionally gifted in writing, and quite extraordinary. I watched his reaction carefully. I find Marcus to be a perfect match for me. With every word I spoke, Alexander's face darkened further. I love reading, and he loves reading too. He's about to be stationed elsewhere for his post. Don't you think that if Marcus and I marry, we'd be far away in the mountains and rivers, out of everyone's sight? Wouldn't that be grand? I intentionally emphasized, out of sight, desperately hinting that if he just let me go, I would leave the capital and never appear before him again. The air suddenly froze. After a long while, the corners of Alexander's lips slowly curved upward, as if he were so angry he had to laugh. A match? How is he a match for you? Do you have nothing else to say to me? I looked up, pretending to be deeply in love with Marcus. True, everyone outside says you're a great villain. I wonder if Marcus will feel I'm not worthy of him. Alexander turned and left, the wind carrying a chill through the window as he slammed the door. I shivered, unsure if Alexander had agreed or not. To my horror, just 1 day later, Marcus was found guilty of exam cheating, and his ranking was revoked. When Alexander threw the evidence of the crime before me, he sneered. It seems he doesn't love reading as much as you thought. Heaven and earth seemed to collapse around me. Alexander wouldn't even let me leave the capital. To save my life, my only option was to flee. Taking advantage of the night, I climbed over the mansion wall. I didn't dare rent a carriage, yet I was unlucky enough to run into a street patrol. In a panic, I ducked into a carriage parked in a dark alley. As soon as I squeezed inside, I found myself face to face with Natalia. Her eyes widened in shock. I covered her mouth instantly. "If you help me leave the capital, I will surely repay you," I whispered desperately. "I have no one else to turn to. If I ask anyone else, I fear they'll be implicated. But I know Alexander. He would never harm his own biological sister." She blinked and nodded slowly. I breathed a sigh of relief, let go, and handed her all the banknotes I had. "This is all I have for now." Miss Natalia didn't say anything, but a look of pity fell upon me. "I used to think you were willingly colluding with that Chen dog, but now it seems it wasn't your fault. Alexander must be forcing you." Natalia bit her lip, every word filled with indignation. I couldn't help but defend him. "Actually, your brother isn't someone who can't distinguish right from wrong." She suddenly looked as if someone had grabbed her by the throat, her entire face flushing red. "Brother. Your brother. I don't have that kind of brother." The moonlight filtered through the silk curtain, and I spotted a jade token Natalia had dropped on the floor. The jade was warm and lustrous, carved with tiny characters. I froze. Alexander had even given her his personal token. To see this token was to see the Prince Regent himself. Following my gaze, Natalia looked disgusted as she picked it up. "I'll help you. I'll get you out of the city tonight." My heart was full of doubt. Why was Miss Natalia here? She told me to lean closer, and only when I was right next to her did she whisper, "I've fallen for someone. Now that my mother is better, I'm sneaking out tonight for a secret trust." "A trust," I repeated, bewildered. "Is that word supposed to be used that way?" My expression was complicated. Wasn't it said that Lord Nathaniel was a strict and upright official? That his wife was a devout, kind Buddhist who raised her daughter to be gentle, refined, and well-versed in etiquette? Yet, when it came to running away, Natalia was even more excited than I was. With Alexander's jade token in hand, the city guards didn't give us any trouble. After taking me out of the city, Natalia even left the carriage for me, telling me to take care of myself before returning alone. By the time she got back, the capital was already dotted with flickering torches. The Imperial Guards were out in force. The man leading them was Alexander. The firelight flickered across his strikingly arrogant face. He gave her one look, and a chill emanated from between his teeth. "Where is she?" Natalia covered her face and sobbed. "If I said she left on her own, would you believe me?" Roughly a month ago, Natalia had gone to the temple pray for her sick mother. Out of 10 visits, 9 times she would encounter a man in plain clothes in the main hall of Xianxia Temple. He was beautiful, with the air of royalty, and always surrounded by attendants. A general following him had asked, "Brother Alex, since we're here, why not go in and pay your respects?" The man put on an act. "I don't believe in gods or Buddhas." The soldiers scratched their heads. "Well, then we'll go pray." While they prayed, Natalia stood waiting by the ancient corridor of the hall, listening to the man mock them. "What's so good about the words of those monks? Walk slowly, I won't see you off. The scenery at Xianxia Temple isn't bad, I'll look around a bit more." Only when it was dark and everyone had left did he familiarly run to the back hall, pull out a gold ingot, and press it into a young monk's hand. "As per the usual, give me the most expensive, largest lamp." Natalia thought, this man is truly a poser. He won't offer in front of others, but does it secretly behind their backs. Miss Natalia, feeling curious, had hidden behind a Buddha statue. The man knelt in the hall, his robes spreading across the floor. His eyes held a faint shimmer, and his face was extremely solemn. "Truly my slaughterous karma in this life is too heavy. Sarah burying the bodies and chanting for the souls is truly a deed of mercy." He bowed his head. "If there is retribution, let it fall on me, Alexander, alone. Do not involve my Sira." Abbot Huifang said, "This was originally just a ruined temple on the outskirts. A noble donated over 10,000 taels of silver to create the Xianxia temple we have today. This man is truly pitiful. Who is Sira, and who is more pitiful?" Natalia had wondered. She ran back to ask her father, "Who is Alexander?" Lord Ning was so frightened his soul nearly left his body. He warned her never to have anything to do with that man. The Prince Regent, Alexander, is a madman. Yet Natalia couldn't help but remember that inexplicably lonely figure in the temple hall. She felt he wasn't as terrifying as her father claimed, but the Alexander before her now was laughing. "I'm asking you, where is she?" His face, illuminated by the fire, hadn't changed at all. Yet he looked as grim and cold as a mountain ghost. My escape had only lasted for exactly 1 hour before Sebastian and his men caught me and brought me back. On the carriage back to the capital, the security was tight. Sebastian was quite helpless. "My lady, the master has said that even if you flee to the ends of the earth, we must bring you back. You two really had a big fight this time. Seriously, what's so good about Marcus?" The guards all chimed in to persuade me. "My lady, even if you're angry with the master, you didn't need to run away like that. If you're truly upset, just wait until the master is better and vent your anger on him. Would he even dare to disobey you?" No one understood the torment in my heart. I let out a bitter laugh. "You all should stop calling me my lady." Suddenly, I paused, slowly realizing something strange in Sebastian's words. "Wait for him to be better. What do you mean?" The guards, who had been noisy just a moment ago, all went silent at once. Strange, extremely strange. With Alexander's vengeful personality, he should have hated that he couldn't personally come to catch me. He wouldn't leave it to others. Unless he couldn't come. My hands on my knees trembled. What happened to him? Sebastian hesitated, finally saying as if resigned to fate, "My lady, the master was attacked by assassins. The arrow was tipped with poison." When I returned to the Chen mansion, Alexander looked as if he were at death's door, lying unconscious on the bed with a large bloodstain spreading across his chest. Several generals who were close to him in Chenzhou were already there. They surrounded him, weeping tragically. "Brother Alex, if you have any last words, say them now." On the bed, Alexander's long lashes fluttered. His gaze pierced through the crowd in the room and landed directly on me. He was silent for a long time before he rasped, "Sarah, you've come." Seeing him like this, I couldn't think of anything else. My heart felt sour. I rushed forward, my hands trembling as I checked his wound. "Brother, how did you end up like this?" The generals looked gloomy. Before leaving, they told him to say what he needed to say and not leave any regrets. The room went quiet. Alexander stared at me, his gaze burning. "Sarah, you know perfectly well that whatever you want, I can give it to you." I nodded, whispering back, "I know." A faint smirk touched his lips, but his eyes were profoundly lonely. "Are you only willing to speak to me properly now because I'm dying?" I told him not to say such unlucky, stupid things. He propped himself up halfway, weakly grasping my hand. "If you're truly angry, hit me, scold me, vent your frustration. But Marcus is absolutely not a good match." He took a ragged breath. "I didn't forge that evidence of his cheating." He closed his eyes, suppressing a cough. Seeing I didn't believe him, his beautiful eyes seemed to cloud over with a layer of mist. "Forget it. Just go. Let me wait for death here." Despite his words, Alexander didn't let go of my hand. The grip on my wrist grew even stronger, and I realized something was wrong. Alexander's inner robe was slightly open, showing his pale skin and sharp lines. The wound on his chest was jagged and looked fierce, but it didn't look like it was poisoned. I turned my face away, my voice cold. "How much longer do you intend to fake this?" Alexander's dark pupils suddenly contracted as he almost panicked, letting go of my hand. He looked at me for a long time and said softly, "If my Sarah is so wise, can you see my feelings for you?" The candlelight flickered. I stood stunned, facing his desolate eyes. The intense, surging emotions he was displaying were now blindingly clear. My breath hitched, and in a moment of panic, I turned to leave. He was faster, leaping out of bed to block the door, his voice as light as a wisp of smoke but carrying an undeniable weight. "And what about your feelings for me?" I didn't know how to answer that question. After all, liking Alexander was never a difficult thing to do. Before we were noticed by Prince Kang, we had endured the most painful times together. By the time Alexander had risen to the rank of centurion through his own efforts, we lived in the cheapest part of western Chenzhou, in a small rented house. At that time Alexander was constantly oppressed by a superior named Lord Cheng. As an outsider, every dirty, tiring, and thankless job was thrown at him. During the day, I would work at a tavern and often bring food to him. Until one day, that man Cheng started talking to me. "So you're the sister of that Alexander. You're young, but quite refined." His gaze lingered uncomfortably on my neck. I ignored him, but he was persistent. That night, the man forced his way into our home. He told Alexander, "You have such great martial skill. It would be a pity if you didn't have someone to support you. You siblings are living in such poverty. A man can give up a few things to gain some real benefits." He finished by letting his greasy gaze fall upon me. The smile on Alexander's face went cold. "Is the Lord interested in my sister Sira?" The man threw some silver coins on the floor. I think highly of you. Take this silver and go out for a few drinks. Don't come back before dawn. Another day, I'll put in a word with Prince Kang, and that position of 1,000-man commander will be yours. Why risk your life on the battlefield? Don't worry, I'm not doing this for free. One time will naturally get you what you want. Quickly, he couldn't speak another word, because Alexander had already gripped his throat, his knuckles cracking, and then one punch after another rained down. In an instant, the once high and mighty Lord Cheng was covered in blood, forced to crawl on the floor like a dog or a pig. I looked once and felt nauseated. Alexander had a cruel smile as he slammed the man's head into the floor again and again. Lady, please save me. Realizing the man was begging me, Alexander looked up, placing a finger to his lips, and gave me a soft, "Sheech, Sarah, be good. Turn your head away." Alexander's voice was low, urgent, and laced with a terrifying finality. I did as I was told and turned around, squeezing my eyes shut. Even though I didn't look and tried desperately not to think, I couldn't escape the sounds coming from behind me. The wet, sickening crunch of bone meeting stone echoed in the small room. That man's head had been split open. When the noise finally stopped, I turned back. Alexander was gasping for air as he stood up from the floor, his chest heaving. I stood there, frozen, my vision already blurred by hot tears. I couldn't stop sobbing, the shock rattling through my small frame. Don't be afraid, Sira. He can't harm you anymore. Alexander's hand trembled violently as he reached out to wipe the tears from my cheeks. But halfway there, he realized his hand was covered in thick, dark blood. He pulled it back sharply, as if burned. He suppressed the tremor in his voice, but his tone remained unnervingly calm. I've killed a superior. There's no escaping death for me now. This place isn't safe anymore. Take the leftover money we have in the house and go. I shook my head vigorously, cutting him off before he could push me away. Brother, if he dared to come here tonight to commit such an evil act, he wouldn't have told anyone. We shouldn't bury him in the courtyard. Let's drag him to the mass grave outside. I've already scouted it. The night watchman next door has been sick for 2 days. Tomorrow morning, I'll take over his shift. He'll be more than happy to let me. Alexander was stunned for a long time, staring at me as if seeing me for the first time. Then, he let out a soft, ragged sigh. Our Sira truly thinks of everything. He stopped resisting and lowered his eyes, letting me take a basin of water to wash the blood from his hands. The water turned red, but my hands didn't shake. I comforted him softly. You do the killing, brother. I'll do the burying. It's only right and natural. Alexander said nothing. I looked up and saw tears shimmering in his beautiful eyes. He seemed utterly lost, but not because he had killed a man. Usually, the young Alexander was full of righteous indignation, even when he was just scolding someone. But that night, his voice was hushed and low, and he turned his face away as if he were crying. Does Sira think her brother is useless? Other girls have beautiful clothes, but our Sira has nothing. I blinked, reaching out to hold his clean hand. But I'm still alive. And you're still alive. We will definitely live well. We'll live very, very well. Alexander didn't answer, he only held me tightly in silence, burying his face in my shoulder. I whispered into the darkness, Brother, I will always believe in you. Another year passed. Alexander helped Prince Kang devise a ruthless strategy to seize the city, and his reputation soared. He became the youngest general under Prince Kang's command. He now had brothers, in arms who would face death with him, and a proper mansion of his own. In the following years, the number of times Alexander came home gradually decreased. The lords were at war, and they were busy conquering lands. Eventually, his close comrades in the army began trying to arrange a marriage for him. Alexander was annoyed, so he used me as an excuse. Sarah is the mistress of this mansion. There is no need for anyone else. One comrade, drunk and foolish, said, A sister is a sister, and a woman is a woman. If not, why not leave your sister to me? When she reaches the age of marriage, I'll wed her. I promise I'll have no other heart. That man was beaten into a pulp by Alexander before he could finish his sentence. Later, as Alexander's military merits piled up, Prince Kang loved to bestow beauties upon him at every banquet. Those women never stayed for more than a few days. Alexander would personally return their deeds of indenture and set them free. Over the years, many women admired him, all sorts of them. I watched as girl after girl tried to approach Alexander, and without exception, they all failed. Yet throughout that entire process, I could only watch in silence, tormented by a conflict in my heart. I wanted him to find someone who would love him with all her heart, but I also hoped that day would come as late as possible. As I grew older, I realized that this torment was called jealousy. I wasn't anyone extraordinary, it was only because he considered me his sister that I enjoyed such treatment. I wanted to help Alexander. I wanted to learn more useful things. When Alexander heard this, he found the best teacher in Chenzhou for me, Master Silas Du. Master Du was a very gentle man who taught me to read and write, but later, he only insisted on teaching me etiquette and poetry. I didn't want to learn those things, so I bought books on political strategy to read on my own. Master Du was furious when he found out and refused to teach me further. Alexander said he would vent my frustration for me, but behind my back, he secretly invited Master Du for drinks. Let Sira read whatever she likes. The Chen family cannot have another person with an empty head. Sometimes, I would steel my heart and say to Alexander, "Brother, why don't you bring home a sister-in-law?" He would answer me seriously, "The great plan is not yet complete. I have no mind for such matters." And back then, I believed him without a doubt. Later, Alexander became the Prince Regent, nominally below one person, but in reality, above tens of thousands. I never truly understood what our great plan was. More than anything, I feared seeing the disappointment in Alexander's eyes. The sister he had pampered for 11 years had shamefully deceived him for so long. The next day, Natalia arrived at the mansion. She was incredibly guilty, and in just 2 days, her attitude had changed completely. Faced with Alexander, she suddenly fell to her knees with a thud. "Brother, your literary and martial brilliance is truly unprecedented, and will never be surpassed. You are the #1 man in the world." Alexander gave a faint laugh. "Don't even dream of entering the palace. That brat of an emperor. I'll depose him sooner or later." When Alana called me over to hear the gossip, Natalia's eyes kept darting back and forth between me and Alexander. She looked at me as if she had suddenly been enlightened. "Sister-in-law. Sister-in-law, please, persuade my brother." Alexander choked on his words for a moment, swallowing his curses. I smiled awkwardly. Was the person Natalia had met that night truly the young emperor, Theodore? That night, I decided to talk to Alexander and clear things up. As for the question he had asked me, I had already thought of the answer. In the bedroom, Alexander hadn't rested yet. He didn't seem surprised when I walked in. He had been angry quite a bit lately. Angry at me, and angry at Natalia. I decided to take it step by step, starting with something less important, and perhaps speaking up for Natalia in the process. I spoke my demand plainly. "Brother, I want to be an official. I think the Ministry of Rights suits me well." The previous dynasty did have a path for female official examinations. Alexander's voice dropped, dangerous and low. "Is this all you came to talk to me about?" My voice grew smaller. I grabbed his sleeve and gave it a gentle tug. "Speak to the young emperor for me. Doesn't he listen to everything you say? Natalia told me today that a woman who knows how to act cute has the best fate." But Alexander only let out a cold laugh. "I think you should enter the Ministry of Personnel instead. After all, helping people overturn old cases is what suits you best, isn't it?" I didn't understand what he meant and continued. "Besides, you've let me read books for so many years, and the master taught me the ways of being an official. If I become one, I'll be an extra support for you in court, and another person in the house earning a salary. Isn't that good?" Alexander stared into my eyes, silent. I tested the waters cautiously. "If my dear brother helps me reach the clouds, I will repay him with 10,000 taels of gold." Hearing this, Alexander looked like he was about to go insane with rage. 10,000 taels of gold, are you short on money? Everything in this mansion. Isn't it all yours? The lines of his profile were hidden in the shadows. After a long silence that made me want to retreat, he rubbed his forehead and lay back on the bed. He pulled the silk quilt over his face, his voice muffled. "Serafina, I don't mind you stepping on me to climb higher. I once said I would give you whatever you wanted. But if you insist on choosing this path, you must be prepared for the hardships to come." My heart tightened. Why did he think I was using him? I couldn't allow Alexander to misunderstand me like that. I took a deep breath and spoke the truth. "Brother, actually I was just acting cute." He gave a cold snort from beneath the quilt. "This time, for your precious Marcus, you're even willing to invent such a lie." Alexander suddenly threw back the quilt and sat up. His dark eyes were exceptionally bright in the dim room, but the mocking smile on his lips remained. My heart trembled as I stepped closer to him. "There is no Marcus. I've never even met him. I lied to you." I was just afraid that once you found your real sister, you wouldn't want me anymore. I was trying to find a way out for myself so you wouldn't take revenge on me." The more I spoke, the more aggrieved I felt. Recently, the strange floating words had stopped appearing, but they had once painted such a tragic end for me. Alexander frowned, stunned. Syrah's feelings for me are real. Look closely. Who am I?" Before I could answer, his arm was already around my waist. His hand on my waist was trembling violently, yet he stubbornly tightened his grip. In a blur, I was pulled onto the bed. The bed curtains fell, enclosing us in a private world. Alexander supported the back of my head, leaning in close, his voice soft and coaxing. "Say it." Our eyes met. I closed mine and whispered, "It's you, Alexander. The one I like from beginning to end. It has always been you." Then, a flurry of kisses fell upon me. The air grew heavy and hot. He propped himself up, his warm breath falling on my neck. "Actually, I've learned to play the lute. I'm quite good at it." "But there's no lute here," I murmured, confused. The kisses from before had left my mind blank and my body floating. I couldn't think, and I didn't want to. It wasn't until a while later that I understood what he meant. The playing was slow and rhythmic, plucking and lifting. His skill was indeed excellent. The music of that night was like a drowning soul finally being saved. The moon wasn't too bright, and I only caught a glimpse of Alexander's beautiful face, wet with emotion. Alexander couldn't remember how many times he had called me Sarah. He was a greedy man who never had enough. He wanted me to call his name in return. He was so happy, he had never known such joy. Before he had shamefully hidden his base desires, fearing he would scare me away. The last time he had felt this kind of joy was at Xianxia Temple. When he had seen the birthmark on Natalia's neck, he realized that heaven had been incredibly kind to him. If Natalia was his biological sister, then a different world was possible between him and me. Ever since Alexander had escorted the young emperor into the capital, those with hidden agendas had set their sights on me. Alexander was consumed by jealousy. Every single man on those matchmaker lists was far too ordinary to be worthy of his Syrah. Alexander had tried to numb himself with wine, but he knew he couldn't hold me back forever. He thought that, long as I liked someone, it would be okay, but when he gave the lists to me, my eyes were innocent. "I truly don't like anyone. Why don't you choose for me, brother? Whoever you say is good, I'll take." Alexander lied to himself, thinking I was still young and could stay for a few more years. But then I said I didn't want jewels or clothes. I told him the mortal world was lonely and I wanted to become a nun. I said pink was too youthful, and that I was 19. Alexander thought I was taunting him, reminding him I was of marriageable age. He was driven to the brink of madness. Xianxia Temple, was it? He had donated 10,000 taels to build that temple, and those bald monks were repaying him like this. He stormed the temple, intending to find the monk I liked and give him 100 lashes. He saw a crowd of monks, but none of them fit the description or were even remotely attractive. He grumbled to himself, thinking my taste couldn't possibly be that bad. And it was on that very day that his biological sister, Natalia, appeared. God only knows the sheer elation Fader felt that day. He investigated everything. Lord Nathaniel's wife had lost a child during childbirth years ago. While convalescing by the Sigua River, they had found a baby girl. The Ning couple was deeply in love, and Lord Ning had never taken a concubine. They raised the foundling as their own. Everything matched. Alexander wanted to announce it to the world. He took his old comrades from Chenzhou out for drinks. He wanted everyone to know that Serafina was no longer his sister, and he could finally express his feelings without restraint. At the banquet, his brothers teased him. "I told you so. Back then, when little Gu mentioned he liked your sister Syrah, you beat him up." Alexander just laughed and let them mock him. But his joy didn't last 2 days. I told him I liked the scholar Marcus and wanted to follow him to the ends of the earth. Even knowing Marcus had cheated and was being exiled to the border, I still wanted to run away with him. And his newly found sister, Natalia, was even more troublesome, helping me escape. Alexander was furious. He had to catch me and ask if I even had a heart. His comrades tried to stop him. "You can bring her back, but you can't force her heart." They laughed, their words stabbing his heart. Then, General Richard Zhao, the experienced one, spoke up. "If you bring her back now and break her engagement, she'll hate you forever." Alexander was stunned. Old Joe gave him a terrible idea. "Last year, I was injured while on duty. My wife, who usually guards her money like a hawk, was so worried she cried. She stayed by my bed, serving me food and water, her voice so soft it didn't even sound like her. I had 3 months of bliss. Alexander understood. He had to act pitiful. He said, Sarah has treated my wounds so many times, she'll see through a fake one instantly. Then it has to be real. He decisively pointed to his chest, acting as if death were nothing. Stab here. My wedding and Natalia's wedding took place almost back to back, and both were incredibly lavish. Natalia got her wish and married the young emperor, Theodore. Alexander pushed aside all opposition to make her the empress of the new dynasty. Since passing the female official examination, I have become very busy. By day, I worked at the Ministry of Rights. By night, I was busy coaxing Alexander. Now that he was retired from power, he started making trouble every few days, demanding I go drinking with him or go horseback riding on the outskirts. He was clingy to the point of exhaustion. Over the next 2 years, Alexander gradually relinquished his power, and Theodore's throne became secure. However, every time the emperor saw Alexander, he was still terrified. One day, while I was arguing with Alexander in the courtyard, news came from the palace. The young emperor had snuck out, and the empress was missing too. Alexander was furious again, grabbing his blade and rushing out. But as soon as he left, Natalia and the young emperor arrived at our door. Natalia was in the lead, with Theodore following behind. As soon as she saw me, Natalia started crying. Someone in the court is trying to make him take concubines. Let him try to marry someone else. She looked up at me with tearful eyes and blinked. Sister-in-law, tell my brother to depose him. Behind her, poor Theo was flustered and crying too. It wasn't my idea. I already refused. Why did you have to come to the Prince Regent to tattle? Where am I supposed to put my face? Do you think he hasn't scolded me enough? The youth stamped his foot. Being an emperor is no fun at all. I glanced at him. So, Your Majesty, do you actually want to take concubines? As soon as I spoke, Alexander came charging back with his blade. You little brat, don't you dare run. Natalia watched with glee as the young emperor scrambled to get away. Brother, you can hit him, but don't scold me. But when she saw Alexander was actually being quite rough, her tone changed. Sister-in-law, look at my brother, he's so fierce. Alexander turned around and saw my darkened expression. He suddenly burst into a laugh born of sheer frustration, and all his anger vanished. Fine. Every single one of you is just great. 3 years later, the sound of reading echoed through the Imperial Academy. The new dynasty had opened the examinations to women. The academy now selects students regardless of gender. Master Silas was mid-lecture, his words flowing eloquently, when a young man suddenly rushed in. Master Du looked closely and recognized his former student, who had recently entered the censorate. The young man was weeping piteously. Master, today during the court assembly, I noticed something wrong with the design of the official robes. I dared to speak up, but everyone around me went dead silent. Only His Majesty looked at me with praise. Master Du thought for a moment. Isn't that a good thing? As a censor, you should be brave enough to speak. You did well. The man looked like he was about to cry blood. They said that by speaking up, I was criticizing the Prince Regent's taste. Master Du rubbed his forehead. You've offended Alexander. Well, you'd better start preparing your funeral arrangements. The young man fell to his knees with a thud. I don't want to die yet. Please, Master, give me some guidance. Master Du looked at the room full of students and felt quite embarrassed. After a while, he sighed and said, Well, there is one last move. The man asked desperately, Who can save me from this fire and brimstone? Master Du stroked his beard, looking profoundly wise. The Minister of the Ministry of Rights, Serafina Chen. This story poignantly reminds us that the truest bonds are not forged by blood, but by shared survival and unwavering devotion. Serafina lived in fear of being a fake replacement, failing to see that to Alexander, she was the only reality that mattered. Love does not always manifest in gentle words. Sometimes, it hides behind a villain's ruthless protection, shielding us from a cruel world. We learn that we must look past our own insecurities and the labels society imposes to recognize the silent, sacrificial love that has walked beside us through the darkness all along. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.